Hello, everyone, and welcome to season 3, week 5 of the Inspire series. Here I am once again with my fantastic team of partners in story: Karen, Josh, Sarah, Holly, and Michelle. And tonight we have with us a special guest all the way from Turkey, Chris Evans, who is a uh, more than once published author. Is that correct?
Yeah,
And a
really.
PR and marketing expert 3 times. Yeah.
Yeah,
So, welcome everyone. Tonight we're talking about beyond the book. What happens next? You've got your book. What do you do with it? And I guess, Chris, that's where you come in. Um, there's so many different avenues we can go down to promote our book, but not everyone knows about them. So, let's, if you want to just tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you've done and how you got into PR. And yeah.
yeah. The getting into PR bit was an ex-girlfriend's dad. We were sat having dinner. I was about to graduate from university. I still don't know what I want to do with my life, so I definitely didn't back then. And he said, "Go and have a week's work experience with my PR agency." Um, for those of you that have lived in the UK, you'll probably remember back in the 90s a shooting at a school in Dunblane, and that was my first job. So I got thrown very much in the deep end and just kind of stuck with it. And it's let me travel the world. This is now the 10th country I've lived in. So started in the UK, went across Europe, have done most of the Middle East now, ended up as far away as Jakarta. I would have come to Australia, but the next plane was always going to Bali for the weekend. And quite frankly, I wasn't missing that. So I am probably one of the few people who's made a decision on a Friday afternoon to go and have a weekend in Bali, or made a decision in an afternoon to go to the Isle of Wight. I'll take Bali every time. So I've worked for some huge agencies, some really big companies. I've also run two of my, well, I'm on my third company now, because we set it up last week. Um, and I've worked with individuals, huge agencies, like huge companies like Aramco, for example, which is always interesting when you have an aversion to plastics because it really messes up the boat engines when you're sailing. Um, and so working for them, the amount of environmentalists I found that worked for them that were having a huge impact was really interesting and not really what people expect. Um, I was lucky that when I was in Indonesia, it was the start of the whole social media explosion. Um, and the Indonesians took social media a lot more seriously than anyone else in the world at that time. So I was going literally, where did I suddenly get 100,000 followers on my account from when I've never even posted a tweet? You can't do it now. Unfortunately, somebody took Twitter over and has basically killed it. Um, Last year, when I set up the author Twitter page, I went from 0 to 5,000 followers in a couple of weeks, just by interacting. And that's one of the key things with everything in marketing is interaction. Um, and again, you're now at a point, I think I've had 3 new followers in about a month, just because Twitter, the interaction has died out. I am finding Facebook works really well, and there's some very niche business sites that work well, and LinkedIn works well. Instagram can do if you've already got a following, but be very aware about 50% of the follow requests and everything I get are actually not real people. And Instagram is probably the worst of the lot for that one. Having said that, it's lovely to wake up and go, oh, look, there's 20 likes of something random I put up, even if it is all fake. But most of this summer, that involved turtles. So um, a lot of people and kids got involved in that as well. Um, with the actual job, it was very much learning as I went along to start off with and just gaining the experience. But when you've gained that experience, you can actually see where people are making their biggest mistake. And it's always the same thing. And it gets really frustrating sometimes. But and I find this particularly with authors, they're saying, I'm trying to sell my book. Like, your book is only a product. The brand is what you're selling. And you as an author are that brand. And every single author is different. And really, that's the crucial part where I see people going wrong. And then I see them spraying everything over every single social media post they can find. It's kind of, stop it. You've got no message. People don't know who you are or what you're doing. You need to be a lot more focused. And that's the big thing that I see going wrong everywhere. I also see people going, oh, we want to be in the big bookseller magazines or national newspapers. Yeah, I wish you luck unless you're a celebrity, because we're authors. We're not, and actually our target isn't really the national newspapers. I actually did an interview last week where I interviewed the editor of the local newspaper, which is really interesting to see how he works. And I've got one of the files behind me. It's just full of newspaper cuttings. I've had 6 front pages in local newspapers over the last 3 months, purely and simply by interacting with them and giving them good stories. And that gets the name out there. It's not always about the books. Sometimes it's just having your name there. I walked down to the beach over the summer and actually had this English couple turn around and go, "You're Maximilian Sam," which is my author name. And it was incredible, just absolutely incredible to see people recognize me. So I went and looked at the book sales and went, they might recognize me, but go and buy my book. So, which I think we all go through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So,
but there have been a lot of weird and wacky things that I've been doing over the last couple of years. And one of the things I'd like to hear from everyone else is kind of the more out of the box thinking there's been. Because certainly when you emailed me, you were talking about doing book tours and signings. Because I'm in Turkey, I can't do that. I did have someone in Dallas actually go to a book fair for me, and I just sent them the posters. We ended up with newspaper coverage in Dallas, in Texas. And it's kind of, I've never been to the US. So that was quite cool. But she's also a teacher. She bought copies of both books for all of her school kids at the year end, and then got me on a Zoom call for an hour with all the children. The single most terrifying experience of my life, I think. But they were great fun and really good questions. And they then actually used the book for a national reading competition over in the US. And a couple of days ago, they sent me the winning answer sheet, as it were, from the child that won it. Amazing enough, they also bought copies of the book, and I didn't have to give a discount, so I was very happy.
Yeah. I think out of the box thinking is really, really important these days. We still need to do our book signings. We still need to do our launches. Josh, you're great at out of the box thinking with what you put on socials. You are just so out there. You work a lot with school kids, but you do it in a different way. Your social media is a bit different. And I think it's also that the way you're branding yourself, like Chris is saying, you're becoming your brand, or you are your brand. And that's what I see every time I see a post of yours.
Yeah, that is true. I suppose I am more than my books, but secretly we all just say, buy my books, buy my books. That's all we really want. Because, you know, I suppose the thing is, once you've written the book and how to get it out there, it's like you got to treat it like a business. And the thing is, with treating like a business, like I am the brand. So what I do is I take all the themes from my 5 kids' books and I extrapolate what they look like in the real world. And I suppose I look at the themes of the kids' books and go, how do they relate to the kids? Plus also, how do they relate to the adults and to the parents as well? And so on social media, I talk directly to the adults about the themes that are in the kids' books. So therefore, I've got all the parents going, yeah, I relate to that. Yeah, I wanted to know that. Plus, I want my kids to know that too. So therefore, that leads in for them to go, okay, let's get the books to my kids and stuff like that. But it's also, realizing that the books are not the only thing. You've got to have your school visits, your book signings and all that sort of stuff. And we've all been to book signings. I don't know if we've all, where no one has turned up at all. I think that's like a rite of passage for every author to sit there and go, hello, anyone? Beulah? Anyone?
I'm in denials.
Yep. And then your mother-in-law comes up and goes, oh, okay, thanks, great. But then again, you go then when you do school visits, and you can do 1,000 kids in one session, and so it's polar opposites. But I suppose for me it is because I want to make it my business and make it my livelihood. I really look at every angle, how I can work it, how I can make it happen. And because I've got the core themes of my books, it's easier for me to go, okay, well, I'm going to talk about self-acceptance here, or I'm going to talk about kindness here, I'm going to talk about emotional regulation, or talk about resilience. So I've got all these 9 key topics that I can talk about and expand on and look at them all from different angles. And then that gives me lots and lots of content to talk about, and also content to pitch to schools or to pitch to other agencies and stuff like that, to go, okay, well, look, do you want to talk about this? Let's open that conversation. So that's how I look at it anyway.
Yeah. You look at the big picture. Sarah, you did a lot of, I think, agreeing with Josh there. Just
yeah,
reading you on
completely.
the screen. It's because you're becoming your own brand too now. Maybe a bit different.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. Well, I think we're talking about beyond the book, and I think what's important for people to understand who are listening is that often is beyond means after, but it's not. It's before. And just to give you an example, last night I had a meeting with my American publisher, and this is our 6-month plan that we're working towards now until launch day, and it's very specific, and there's a lot of marketing that goes in way before the book comes out, and then it's beyond the book afterwards. And that's what I'm finding a lot with a lot of the publishers that I'm working with now. I mean, with my French publisher, it's been about 2 years in the making, because there's lots of things that we're doing beforehand and changing and working out, and they want to know where all the book festivals are. So when we talk about beyond the book, if you are looking at self-publishing your book, don't think that is the beginning, that when that book is printed and then published, that is where it then begins. You need to be doing your work 12 to 6 months before that book comes out. And I think that's what we've spoken about a lot of, over the episodes, is about all this prep work beforehand. And again, like similar to Chris, like I'm based in the UK, but I primarily work with foreign publishers. So for me, it's a lot of virtual events. But since the pandemic, dare I say it, that's kind of become an acceptance. I mean, during the pandemic, it was a lot of virtual appearances at book fairs. And that's stayed, and as well as the school events. So there's a lot of virtual events that I do. I did Children's Book Week in the US 2 weeks ago for schools. We were working out last night with the US publisher about doing a book tour around New York, but virtually. So I think that's how it's kind of progressed and changed slightly. You just need to really go into it. And I think I said this last week, with your eyes open. You have to have that business mind with your book. You've got that creative side of you, and that's brilliant. But you want your story to be out there. So for your story to be out there, it needs to be in a vehicle, which is the book. That's the physical product. And that's when you need to get your business head on. So beyond the book, it's all the bits before. And that's very much the business part, I think, and the networking. We've talked about support this morning. You get other authors on board, because they also have platforms. Use their platforms as well, because ultimately it's readers and it's audiences who are following them as well. So this is your audience. This is who you want to be speaking with. So leading up to the book, you really need to have these points down of how you are going to get this book out there and get it noticed. And then it starts, and that's when you can do a lot of the virtual work, the book signings, the book stores, the school visits. Really, really, really important. But you really need to go into it with your eyes open. It's not just writing that book and, you know, as we said before, just printing it. It is publishing it. And that's whether you self-publish or you're with a publisher, because although, yes, it's lovely, you know, you can go through traditional publisher and they do a lot of things. I mean, I have a lot of support and you have a budget, but they are still expecting you to be coming up with the ideas and for you to be networking and for you to be showing up. So think of, it's not just beyond the book, it's around the book. It's what surrounds that whole book that I think people really need to be looking at. Watch other authors. What are they doing? Who are they tapping into? Where are they going? Do the same.
Yeah. Good advice. Karen, you've just self-published. Still waiting for those books to hit the shore.
I will be doing a post with me dancing on the footpath. Those books arrived. I don't know how many times I've planned to launch, but I know because my book is going to be local, my community's seen me working and towards this goal for quite a few years. So I think they can see, I think as an author, when you're talking about your brand, you've got to be true to yourself. And with me, that's what they see. I'm not anything, I don't pretend to be anything but myself. And my book's about where I live, and they know I love it, and they know I live there. I'm in their community. So, in fact, I'm actually networking with my community, not other authors, because there's no one around me who is another author. I do online, but when I'm out and about, it's my community involved with my book. Like tonight, a couple came up and they said, "Oh, we've seen some of the sketches and we've seen it come together and we've seen some of the words. We can't wait for the book." So, and I did books in homes yesterday because I'm passionate about children's literacy. So you can see I'm passionate about where I live. You can see I'm passionate about my children reading, and I'm compassionate about creating children's books. So everything I do, it's not forced, it's not planned, it just falls into line. It's who I am and what I do.
Yeah.
And it's the same with the school visits. And even when I do books in homes, as soon as I sat down, because it was a significantly disadvantaged school, and they said, "Oh, we've got lots of hairy ones in here," I just started, bang, and they were in. And because I love the story, they love the story, and there was no behaviour problems. And then I could talk about it at the end, and because I've had teaching experience, I could bring in the months of the year and ask little questions, and I brought the visual literacy in. So I think everything you do, you bring to the table. But I must admit, my weakness is, it's not my passion, it's not my brand, it's marketing it and learning how to sell. Because it's like a puzzle, and they all go together.
That's where you don't sell. That's the trick I find, Karen, is that I did it in the beginning. I just go, buy my book.
No, I don't do that. Yeah.
No, when you realize that it's your brand and it's your personality that's coming out, and you're just sharing you, that's what draws people in.
Yeah.
And that's what people go, I want to discover what Karen's on about. Oh, she's got a book. Let's get the book. That sort of thing. Yeah. It's like what Chris was saying.
Yeah,
I mean,
go ahead,
when I started, I actually put together an entire business plan before I even looked at where am I going to publish the book, how am I going to go about this. And the things in the business plan have actually run a lot quicker than I expected. And it comes down to that whole, it's not beyond the book, it's a whole universe you're building that is a business. And I think because I'd run my own businesses previously, actually having that business plan there and working on, I'm selling a product, but the brand is what's important. I had a journalist contact me earlier this year just going, can you do me a 600-word piece on your local village? And it just has my author name as having written it. It doesn't always need to be about the book, but again, it's getting that name and recognition out there, which is really important. And then it's building around that. And it's true. You going and saying, please buy my book, or in my case, my book or some of my merchandise. We are lucky as children's authors. We have characters we can stick on t-shirts in a split second. So just looking at books, actually we're missing something. We should have posters, baseball caps, t-shirts, whatever it may be, and it works. And I've been fortunate. I did a lot of research and I found a partner company. It doesn't even cost me anything. They just send me a percentage of whatever the sales are, and they take care of customer service, postage, everything. And I think it's a big, it's, I'll send you.
Send me the name of this place, Chris. I'm interested.
No problem. They're based in Germany, but they are really, really good, and the quality is exceptional, which was obviously the bit we were worried about. But you've taken it then from not just having the books, people are then buying into the whole world that you've created, and suddenly it's the whole brand is what's important. People will go and buy, but if you look, even if you look, Hollywood is a really good example of doing this. Do you go and watch a film because of the description of the film, or because who's in it, or who's directed it, or because it's a James Bond film? So I stick with the James Bond analogy every time. And it's, if you look at the way they market, it's exactly how we should be looking as authors, because you built up, you'll automatically have a following. And I love the fact that Karen's going, it's all about my community, and you have an automatic following there. You've got your hook probably better sorted than any of us, because you live it. And that's, as authors, what we should be. We're all different. There's a little bit of all of us in each of our books, however hard we try for there not to be. And therefore, we've all got a different story to tell. So building that hook has got to be the first place to start. And as I say, Karen's got that nailed down possibly better than anyone I've ever heard before. And that's the way it should be. Who are we trying to talk to? What is it we're trying to do? For me, I didn't set out to be a children's author. It was an accident, a total accident. I was writing a thriller that's now 10 years in the making and not going anywhere. And we got a knock on the door one morning saying that our stray dog had been hit by a car and killed. As it happened, the car came off worse. The dog was fine. And we finally lost her 4 years later last summer, when she was 17. And yeah, I didn't write a word for about 6 weeks after that. But after the supposed car crash, I actually went down to the beach, sat at the bar, and wrote a letter to her, because that was my way of dealing with the grief. And then I looked up and saw all the other strays, and the whole light bulb moment was there, and the whole brand just came to me. I've lived in 10 countries around the world. I'm a stray myself in many ways. And it was literally that light bulb moment, seeing these stray dogs on the beach by themselves. And it's kind of, there's my brand. Someone's just handed it to me on a plate. And there is this big issue that people don't do that business plan to start with. And Sarah's bang on with this. It's not about publishing day. It's about all the legwork you've put in for at least 12 months before. And that includes building up on social media. But don't just throw things widely across social media. Focus. Are you going to use LinkedIn? Are you going to use Facebook? And then focus it. I've started now taking quotes from the book and just putting them up on LinkedIn or Facebook, and people start reacting. And I have to admit, it was a bit of a cheeky one yesterday, but no one's picked up on it yet, so I'll leave it where it is. But that also, it means people are consistently seeing you, and you don't need to do it every day, once, twice, maybe 3 times a week, and they're constantly seeing you. You're building that interaction, and it's all about your brand, and your name's always on it, so the brand's there. And it was interesting, you've probably noticed I've been using a pen and writing a few things down, because the business plan and the merchandise was really interesting. Karen's local, my big thing in PR Why does everyone ignore local media? It's the most powerful thing out there. Local newspapers and your local community, they're the ones who go, I know that person, I'll buy the book. My old school has written 4 articles over the last 2 years in their newsletters about my books. It's parents buying books for their kids. It's a bit of a no-brainer, and I'm yet to see anybody else do it. It's kind of, you're missing this huge market. The school loves it because it goes, we've got an old boy that's being successful. It helps them bring more people in, so it's good for them, and it works for all of us. But one of the things Josh said that I found really interesting, I used to do some PR work for Cartoon Network. So yeah, I did get to meet Fred Flintstone. And the big thing we did for them, none of it was talking about kids. All the advertising figures and overnight viewing figures were all done. We were actually looking at young stay-at-home mothers before the kids are old enough to go to school. All the advertising on Cartoon Network is aimed at young mothers. Why would we as children's authors be aiming our books at the kids? They aren't the ones with the wallet. So it's actually the parents who are going to be reading this with their kids at bedtime, hopefully. That's the dream. And that's why it's really important. Who is our market? Yes, it's great having other authors to interact with, and it's been a massive help to me over the last 18 months, definitely. But it's also pointless me trying to talk to children directly. You know, the book, that's why for all of us, the book cover is key. Because if kids can see something that they interact with on the book cover, they'll point it out to the parents. The parents go, oh, I've seen that somewhere. And you sold a book. Which at the end of the day is what we're all trying to do, is obviously get whatever sales we can. None of us started off going, I doubt very much any of us wrote our first book going, this is going to make me huge amounts of money. The business itself and that mindset grows over time. And for me, yeah, it was kind of, well, I've got the book, I'd like to make some money, but the business plan is actually a 5 to 10 year business plan of building a library. For me, I wanted to build a library. If someone comes in and buys one book, I want them to buy the others as well. And that's where the whole branding comes in. And hearing the logic of how you can make that work is really, really important. And seeing different markets that people have attacked and gone, that works for me because that's who I am as an author. And having that hook there of who I am. I see far too many businesses, even, and major businesses, and you see them giving an interview and going, what on earth are you talking about? Because they've been overtrained and all they're doing is trying to give across this message and ignoring everyone they're speaking to. We all have a hook. And if we have that hook, the messaging will come naturally. And then you can add in the anecdotes, such as Cartoon Network and far too many others from around the world that I have. And that's really what we're looking for, of what makes you different. And when you see people going, I hate writing the back cover blurb, why? That should actually, if anything, be go back to your notes and look at the first time you jotted down the idea for this book, and the chances are your back cover blurb is already written. It seems to be a little bit of a block for people, whereas it's actually really simple. How are you, if someone asks you to describe your book, how would you describe it? In 2 sentences. And there you go, there's your back cover blurb, all done. And it really is that simple.
Yeah.
I'm just watching Josh going, hang on, I'm writing that down. That's a good idea.
Right, you can see me.
That's okay. I'm sending the invoice later. You're fine.
Okay, thank you. 35 cents.
Yeah.
Finally, I'm getting double pay.
Yeah. I think we've dropped some really, really, really good gold nuggets here tonight in what has been said. Holly, have you got anything to add? I think, like the branding is really important. Everything that's been said is really important. Is there anything in particular for you as an author?
I can't think of anything really specific more than what's been said. for myself, it's been predominantly virtual because of the timing and the amount of books that I have. The one myself, I've got a bunch of anthologies, but again, the timing, it's all been like since 2019. Yeah. And of course, because of what I'm working on right now, tend to be working on a bunch of things at the same time. So, but I agree with all the things that have been suggested, and there's so many opportunities to connect. I just think it's so amazing that we have the opportunity to network with all different countries, and just the opportunities are just endless. So it's so exciting.
Yeah. Michelle, you've been sitting there kind of smiling and nodding your head.
Yeah. I agree with everything that's been said, but I don't want first-time authors who are listening to be discouraged, because I know how hard it is as a creative to balance those two sides of the coin, just like what we've been talking about. The book comes first for me, so it's always the creative process and writing, because I don't want to be a salesman. I don't want to do that. I got out of corporate so that I could be an author, and it's finding that beautiful balance between knowing that you are a creative person, and then that you are writing your books and you're fulfilling that dream of yours, with the thought that that's all nice, but unless you're actually going to reach the people who are actually going to get the most out of reading your stories, then you might as well just keep your stories in the drawer and never try and publish them. So the struggle is real. There is a real struggle for people who do not have a business mindset coming into this industry going, but I thought I just get to write books in my jammies and drink coffee all day. Like that's why I wanted to do this. So trying for them to get their mindset around the business side of it, again, just like Sarah was saying, whether you're traditionally published or independently published, it doesn't matter. You need an ABN for both. So as soon as you're published, you're going into business as an author. So I don't want it to seem like that it's this big, scary, crazy thing. It's really something that evolves with you over time, and start out local community, start out doing the local markets, use people who already know you, talk to schools what your kids are involved with, look at the book, what are the themes from the book that you can reach out to people, and do it that way. And it's something that evolves over time as you evolve, because what I'm doing now for my books is very different than what I was doing when I first was published. So don't think that you have to have everything figured out. Just know that, that is a part of what it means to be an author, I guess.
Yeah. Balance is key for everything, isn't it? I agree with everything that has been said. Sorry, Chris.
It's really interesting hearing what Michelle's saying, because effectively you're describing the snowball effect, where I had an interview with someone last August, so just over a year ago. That led to someone seeing it and putting my first two books on their must-buy for Christmas list, which was weird. First year as an author getting that, and also led to me winning awards, which was even scarier. But that then led on to someone else seeing it, who's written reviews for my books, and she introduced me to someone. I have a 10-page magazine article coming out tomorrow. And that has literally snowballed from right at the beginning. Someone contacted me on Twitter, and I did the interview. And it's exactly as Michelle says. When you start, don't focus on how many you're selling, because you will go crazy in moments, quite frankly. It is a process, and it's a process you learn from. Interacting with other writers, authors, that is the greatest help you can have, because you'll learn from their mistakes. The publishing world is terrifying at times. So we need that support from other authors, because they've been there, seen it and done it. There's a lot I wish I'd known, because I definitely have done things differently with the first book. But you can't change time, you can only learn from it. So I think Michelle's really hit the nail on the head there. It's not an industry to run away from. If you've got a good book, the sales will come at some point. Sometimes it can take 2-3 years, sometimes it can take 2-3 weeks. We never really know how long that'll take. I do know there's some very, very famous authors out there who have now come back to social media plugging their books. And I spoke to a couple of them. I spoke to Jeffrey Archer a couple of days ago, because I suddenly went, why are you suddenly doing videos on Facebook and Twitter about your books? And he goes, basically, it's the only way we can announce the fact I've got a new book coming out. And that really shook me. This is one of the world's greatest selling authors, and he's going back to the basics. And I find that really interesting, that actually look at what we all learn as we go along, and just multiply and multiply and multiply. And it has a big effect. And it's interesting to hear Michelle saying everything has changed since I started, because what you learn and what you learn from other people is crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this has been a great session tonight from the very beginning. It's just been nugget after nugget dropped. And I think that's so important, especially for upcoming authors out there. It's good to know the processes. It's good to know, it's not so much what not to do, but just to be aware of what is out there, and be aware that, yeah, you do need to think outside the box, and you do need to have that interaction, whether it's your community, whether it's social media. You've got to have that. So it's a combination of everything, and finding that balance so you don't go insane in the meantime. It's finding that balance between it all. So thank you so much, everyone, for your input tonight. Loved listening to you all. I've written a few notes myself on this one. Yeah, and thanks, Chris, for joining in with us.
No
all the way from the other side of the world. It's great. We will welcome you back again, I'm sure, another time. See what other gold we can get from you. So thank you, everyone. We're going to stop it here. We won't talk on forever. So yeah, thanks, and we'll see you again next week.
Bye.
Bye.